It was an ordinary day in the bustling city, where life moved quickly and everyone seemed caught in their own worlds. But in a quiet corner of the courthouse, something extraordinary was about to happen. Something that would leave everyone in that room stunned, their hearts racing and their minds flooded with questions. The courtroom was filled with the usual mix of tension and monotony. Lawyers whispered hurriedly to their clients, the court reporter typed away, and the judge, a seasoned woman known for her calm demeanor and sharp wit, presided over the bench. Her name was Judge Meredith Hall, and she had seen it all, or so she thought. It started as a routine session, the kind that rarely made headlines. A case involving a custody dispute was being heard, the kind that tugs at emotions but often fades into the sea of countless cases just like it. The atmosphere was heavy, though not unusual. Each side presented their arguments, each parent pleading their case to gain custody of a young boy. Tensions were high, voices strained with emotion, but still, it was all within the bounds of what Judge Hall expected. And then, the door to the courtroom swung open. At first, no one turned. The sound was faint, almost drowned out by the lawyer addressing the judge. But then came the footsteps, quick, light, and filled with urgency. Heads turned toward the entrance as a small figure darted into the room. A boy, no older than 7, burst in, his face flushed and his tiny chest heaving as if he'd been running for miles. Judge Hall's gavel froze mid-air, her words caught in her throat as she tried to make sense of what was happening. The lawyers fell silent, their papers forgotten, their mouths slightly agape. The spectators in the gallery, who had been quietly observing the proceedings, leaned forward in their seats, their curiosity piqued. The boy's eyes were wide with determination, a striking contrast to his small, trembling frame. He was clutching something tightly in his right hand, but it was his voice that cut through the stunned silence like a knife. "Stop everything," he yelled, his voice carrying a weight far beyond his years. Judge Hall's brows furrowed in confusion, and she leaned forward slightly, trying to get a better look at the child. Who was he? And why was he here? The court bailiff hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. The boy didn't seem like a threat, but his sudden appearance had thrown everyone off balance. The boy scanned the room, his gaze landing on the two people seated at opposite ends of the courtroom, the couple at the center of the custody battle. His small hand trembled as he raised it, and it was then that everyone saw what he was holding. A gasp rippled through the room. Judge Hall's face turned a shade paler, her usual composure slipping for the briefest moment. Her eyes widened and her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. She stared at the boy, her mind racing as she tried to piece together what this could mean. The boy looked directly at the judge, his voice steady despite the quiver in his hands. "Please, you have to listen. You don't understand what's really going on." The air in the courtroom seemed to grow heavier, the weight of his words settling over everyone like a dense fog. Judge Hall motioned for the bailiff to step back, her instincts telling her that this was no ordinary interruption. There was something in the boy's tone, something in the way he held himself, that demanded attention. "What is it you want to say?" she asked gently, her voice laced with curiosity and caution. The boy hesitated for a brief moment, his gaze flickering between the judge and the two people he had run in to confront. His tiny hand tightened its grip on the object he was holding, and he took a deep breath, steadying himself. Then, with a voice that was both fragile and fierce, he uttered 2 words that sent a chill through the room. "Help me." The courtroom erupted into whispers, the air electric with speculation. What could a child like this need help with? Why was he here? And what was it about the object in his hand that had turned Judge Hall's face ashen? The answers were far from clear, but one thing was certain. This was no ordinary case, and the truth, whatever it was, would change everything. For a long moment, the courtroom was frozen in silence, the boy's trembling voice still echoing in the air. Judge Hall's eyes were locked on the small figure standing before her. His words, "Help me," rang louder than any gavel strike. The object in his hand was still partially hidden, gripped tightly as if it was the only thing keeping him steady. Judge Hall cleared her throat, trying to regain control of the room. "Bailiff, please make sure the boy is safe," she said, her voice steady but softer than usual. The bailiff, A large man named Officer Daniels slowly approached the boy, his hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. "It's okay, son," Officer Daniels said gently. "No one's going to hurt you. You're safe here." But the boy flinched, instinctively pulling back, his grip tightening on the object. His eyes darted nervously around the room, as if searching for an escape. "No, don't come any closer," he cried out, his voice cracking. Judge Hall quickly raised a hand to stop Officer Daniels. "It's all right. Let him speak." She leaned forward, studying the boy carefully. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The boy hesitated, swallowing hard. "Tyler," he whispered. "Okay, Tyler," Judge Hall said softly. "No one here wants to hurt you, but you need to tell us what's going on. Who are you asking for help from?" Tyler's small shoulders rose and fell with each shaky breath. Slowly, with trembling fingers, he uncurled his hand to reveal what he had been holding. It was a small silver locket, old and slightly tarnished. Judge Hall's breath caught in her throat. That locket. It was unmistakable. She had seen it before. But that wasn't possible. Her mind raced back to a case from years ago, a case that had gone cold. A missing woman, a mother who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers and unanswered questions. And that very same locket had been entered into evidence. It had belonged to her. But that case was closed. Or at least it was supposed to be. Judge Hall's grip on the edge of her desk tightened. "Tyler, where did you get that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tyler's eyes filled with fresh tears, and his lips quivered as he struggled to speak. "She gave it to me," he said, almost inaudibly. Before she disappeared." The entire courtroom seemed to lean in closer. "Who?" Judge Hall pressed, though she was almost afraid of the answer. "My mom." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The man and woman sitting at opposite ends of the room, each fighting for custody, both looked stunned. The woman, pale and wide-eyed, clutched her chest, while the man's jaw tightened, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the edge of the table. Judge Hall's mind raced. This didn't make sense. The boy wasn't listed in any case on her docket today. The couple in the courtroom had only mentioned a son named Daniel in their custody filings. Tyler wasn't supposed to be here. "Tyler," Judge Hall said carefully, "who brought you here today?" "No one," Tyler replied, wiping his nose with the back of his sleeve. "I ran." "You ran?" He nodded. "From where?" Tyler's eyes flicked toward the man at the plaintiff's table. "From him." All heads turned to the man, who suddenly looked nervous under the weight of everyone's gaze. "That's ridiculous," the man snapped, standing abruptly. "I don't know this boy." But Tyler shook his head violently. "You're lying," he shouted, pointing at the man. "You told me not to say anything, but I can't anymore. You're going to hurt her." Judge Hall's pulse quickened. "Order in the court," she commanded, slamming her gavel once, the sharp crack cutting through the tension. She turned to the man. "Sit down." The man hesitated, his face turning a deep shade of red before he slowly sank back into his seat. Judge Hall exhaled slowly, turning her attention back to Tyler. "Who's going to hurt who, Tyler?" she asked, more softly now. Tyler hesitated, his small chest rising and falling rapidly. He clutched the locket as if it could protect him. "They're going to hurt my mom. She's not. She's not gone like they say. She's alive. And they're hiding her." A thick silence blanketed the room. Judge Hall leaned back in her chair, her mind spinning. If what Tyler was saying was true, this wasn't just a custody case anymore. This was something far more dangerous. But why now? Why today? And how did Tyler know about a case that had been closed for years? Judge Hall needed answers, but something told her she wasn't going to like them. Before she could speak again, Tyler's knees suddenly buckled, and he swayed dangerously. "Tyler," Judge Hall called out, rising to her feet. Officer Daniels rushed forward, catching the boy just before he hit the ground. Tyler's face was pale, his body trembling. I'm okay," he whispered, though he clearly wasn't. "We need medical assistance in here now," Judge Hall ordered, her voice echoing across the tense courtroom. As the doors swung open and paramedics rushed in, Judge Hall watched Tyler carefully, His small hand still clung to that locket, even as his eyelids fluttered. And in that moment, Judge Hall knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The courtroom slowly emptied as paramedics carefully lifted Tyler onto a stretcher. His small frame looked even smaller under the harsh fluorescent lights, his fingers still wrapped tightly around the silver locket. Judge Hall watched with a sinking feeling in her chest, her mind racing with questions that had no clear answers. The soft murmurs of the courtroom faded as the heavy wooden doors closed behind the medical team. But the tension in the air remained, thicker than before. Judge Hall slowly sank back into her chair, staring at the empty space where Tyler had stood. Across the room, the man, Daniel Reed, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, but Daniel barely moved. His eyes flicked toward Judge Hall, then toward the doors Tyler had just been taken through. The woman on the other side of the courtroom, Karen Blake, sat frozen. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap, her face pale and drained of color. She looked as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Judge Hall broke the silence. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice sharp and clear, "you seemed quite defensive when the boy pointed at you. Care to explain why?" Daniel straightened in his seat, trying to mask the tension in his posture. "I already told you, I don't know that boy. I have no idea why he would accuse me of anything." His lawyer quickly added, "Your Honor, my client is here solely for the custody hearing regarding his son, Daniel Reed Jr. This child, Tyler, is irrelevant to these proceedings." Judge Hall's eyes narrowed. "Irrelevant?" she repeated slowly. "A child bursts into my courtroom, claims someone is going to hurt his mother, and accuses your client. And you call that irrelevant?" The lawyer opened his mouth, but Judge Hall raised a hand to silence him. "Enough. This hearing is suspended until further notice." She turned toward Karen, whose hands were now clenched tightly. "Ms. Blake, do you recognize that boy?" Karen's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I don't know," she whispered at last. Judge Hall didn't miss the flicker of hesitation in her answer. "We're going to get to the bottom of this," Judge Hall said firmly. "Court is adjourned." She struck the gavel once, but the sound felt hollow. As the room slowly emptied, Judge Hall remained still, her mind spinning. That locket, how did Tyler have it? The missing mother from years ago, Amanda Blake, had been wearing that exact locket the day she disappeared. No one had seen or heard from her since. The case had haunted Judge Hall back then, a rare case that left more questions than answers. And now, this boy appears with the very thing that had been left behind. Judge Hall knew she couldn't ignore this. In her chambers, she sifted through old files until she found what she was looking for: the case file on Amanda Blake's disappearance. Photos, reports, and testimonies filled the folder. And there, clipped to the last page, was a photo of the silver locket. It was identical. Amanda Blake, Karen Blake. Judge Hall's eyes narrowed. Could they be related? A sister? Maybe. A cousin. But that didn't explain why Tyler would accuse Daniel Reed. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Officer Daniels entered quietly, closing the door behind him. "Your Honor, I just spoke with the hospital. The boy's stable, but he's shaken up. He keeps asking for his mother." Judge Hall exhaled slowly. "Did he say anything else?" Daniels hesitated. "Yes, he mentioned a house. Said he was kept in a basement, and he escaped through a small window. Said he ran until he found the courthouse." Judge Hall's blood ran cold. "A basement?" she repeated. "Yes. He said someone locked him in there, but he wouldn't say who." Judge Hall rubbed her temples. "We need to find that house. Did he give any details about where it is?" Daniels shook his head. "Not yet. He's too scared to talk." Judge Hall leaned back, staring at the ceiling. This was becoming bigger than she expected. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Tyler lay on the thin bed, staring at the ceiling. The locket rested on his chest, warm from his skin. He could still hear his mother's voice, whispering in the dark. "Stay quiet, baby. Don't let them hear you." Her voice was soft but urgent. He remembered her hands shaking as she pressed a locket into his palm. "If anything happens, find someone. Show them this." Tyler closed his eyes tightly. They had said she was gone, that she was never coming back. But he knew they were lying. And now, he wasn't sure who he could trust. At the same time, Daniel Reed sat alone in his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. His lawyer's words buzzed in his head, but he couldn't focus. How did that boy know about Amanda? This wasn't supposed to happen. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "You told me this was handled," a cold voice hissed. Daniel swallowed hard. I thought it was." "Well, it's not. And now a judge is involved." Daniel's breath quickened. "What do you want me to do?" Silence. Then, calmly, "Fix it, or we both go down." The line went dead. Daniel stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror, sweat beading on his forehead. This was spiraling out of control. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows of the city, Amanda Blake was still alive. Waiting. Hoping someone would finally find her. Rain began to fall over the city, thin streaks of water sliding down the courthouse windows as darkness crept in. Judge Hall stood by her office window, watching the streetlights flicker to life. The steady hum of rain couldn't quiet the storm inside her mind. The pieces weren't fitting together, but every instinct told her that Tyler's appearance wasn't random. Her phone buzzed, raking her thoughts. It was Officer Daniels. "Judge Hall, we found something." His voice was tense, urgent. "What is it?" she asked, already grabbing her coat. "That boy, Tyler. We traced him back to a missing persons report from 2 years ago. A woman named Amanda Blake." Judge Hall froze. Amanda Blake. Wait, Amanda Blake had a son. "That's where it gets strange," Daniels replied. "The records don't show any child. No birth certificate, no school records, nothing. It's like he doesn't exist." "That's impossible," Judge Hall whispered. "Not if someone made sure he didn't," Daniel said grimly. "And there's more. We ran a property search connected to Daniel Reed. Turns out, he inherited a house just outside the city, abandoned for years, or so it seemed. Neighbors reported lights on late at night, but no one ever saw anyone come or go." Judge Hall's pulse quickened. "The basement," she murmured. "Exactly. We're on our way there now, but something feels off. We're requesting backup, but I thought you should know." "Be careful," she said, voice tight. As the call ended, Judge Hall sat still for a moment, processing everything. Daniel Reed wasn't just fighting for custody, he was hiding something far worse. Across the city, Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter as he approached the house Daniels had just mentioned. The old property sat at the end of a gravel road, swallowed by overgrown trees. Its windows stared blankly into the night, and the front door sagged on its hinges. Daniel killed the engine and sat in silence, staring at the house. He thought this place was forgotten, that it was safe, but Tyler had escaped, and now they were coming. Daniel's hands shook as he reached into the glove compartment, pulling out a small, rusted key, the key to the basement. He had one chance to clean this up. The rain was heavier now, pattering against the cracked windshield. He took a deep breath, opened the door, and disappeared into the darkness. Meanwhile, Judge Hall wasn't content to wait. She grabbed her keys and left her office, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Something told her this wasn't just a matter for the police. At the hospital, Tyler jolted awake in his bed, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead. He had been dreaming, or remembering. His mother's voice echoed in his ears. "Don't let them find me." Tyler sat up, scanning the room. A nurse sat quietly in the corner, reading a chart. "I need to go," Tyler whispered. The nurse looked up. "Sweetheart, you need to rest." "No, he's going to hurt her." Tyler's voice cracked with panic. The nurse tried to calm him, but Tyler was already scrambling out of bed, barefoot and trembling. "I have to find her before he does." And before anyone could stop him, Tyler bolted out the door. Officer Daniels and his team pulled up to the old house, headlights cutting through the misty rain. The property looked abandoned, but the unsettling feeling in Daniel's gut told him otherwise. "Stay sharp," he muttered, signaling his team to spread out. They approached the house cautiously, the wooden porch groaning under their weight. Daniels tried the door. Unlocked. The air inside was thick with dust and dampness. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, and the floor creaked beneath every step. They moved slowly, flashlights slicing through the darkness. Then Daniel spotted it, a faint trail of muddy footprints leading toward the back of the house. A door, slightly ajar. He pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "The basement," Daniels whispered. He signaled to his team and slowly began the descent. The air grew colder with each step, the musty scent of mold mixed with something else, something metallic, blood. They reached the bottom, flashlights scanning the space. Chains hung from the walls. An old mattress lay in the corner, torn and stained. And in the center of the room, a single wooden chair. Empty. But nearby, something caught Daniel's eye. Scratches on the wall. Words carved with something sharp. Asterisk, asterisk, AELPME, asterisk, asterisk. Daniel's blood ran cold. Suddenly, a noise echoed from deeper in the basement. A soft, muffled cry. Daniels spun around. "Move, now." They followed the sound, deeper into the shadows. And then they saw it, a false wall, slightly ajar. Daniels shoved it open. Behind it was a small, windowless room. And in the corner, barely conscious, was Amanda Blake. Pale, thin, and barely alive, but breathing. Her wrists were raw from rope burns, and her eyes squinted against the sudden light. Daniels rushed forward. "Amanda. Amanda Blake." Her lips trembled. He's here," she whispered. Daniel's heart dropped. "Who?" Her eyes widened in terror. "Daniel." Before Daniels could react, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Slow, deliberate. Daniel Reed stood at the top of the basement stairs, silhouetted in the dim light. In his hand gleamed something cold and sharp. Daniels raised his weapon. "Don't move." But Daniel only smiled, slowly descending the stairs. "You weren't supposed to find this," Daniel said quietly, voice steady. Officer Daniels' grip tightened on his gun. "Step back, Daniel. It's over." But Daniel shook his head. "No, it's just beginning." And then the basement door slammed shut. The lock clicked into place, and the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the basement as the lights snapped off, plunging everyone into pitch-black silence. The damp air felt heavier now, thick with fear and something more sinister. Officer Daniels gripped his flashlight, clicking it on, but the weak beam barely cut through the darkness. "Stay close," Daniels barked, his voice tight. His team huddled near, weapons drawn, eyes straining to see through the dim light. But Daniel Reed was gone. Only the faint sound of footsteps echoed somewhere above them, growing fainter, retreating deeper into the house. "He's moving to the upper levels," one officer whispered. Daniels cursed under his breath. "He's trying to trap us down here. We need to get Amanda out now." Amanda Blake's frail figure was pressed against the cold wall, her breathing shallow. "He's not working alone," she croaked. Her voice was barely audible, but laced with panic. Daniels turned sharply. "What do you mean?" Amanda's eyes glistened with fear. "There's someone else. He's been coming here at night, watching. Not Daniel, someone worse." The room seemed to constrict with that revelation. Daniels knelt beside her. "Who? Who's been coming here?" But Amanda just shook her head, her whole body trembling. Above them, a distant creak echoed through the house. Daniel stood, motioning to his team. "We're getting out of here, now." They moved quickly, helping Amanda to her feet, guiding her toward the stairs. But as they reached the basement door, Daniels froze. The lock was smashed. Not from the inside, but from the outside. Daniel's stomach dropped. Someone else had locked them in. Before he could process it, the faint sound of a child's voice echoed from upstairs. "Mom." Daniel's eyes went wide. "Tyler." Amanda's voice cracked, raw with desperation. "Mom, I'm here." Tyler's voice trembled from somewhere above. Daniels grabbed the handle, yanking hard. The door groaned but didn't budge. "Tyler, stay where you are," Daniels shouted. But something about the boy's voice didn't sit right. It was too calm, too steady. Amanda's breath hitched. "That's not him," she whispered. Daniels froze. The voice echoed again, softer this time. Mom, come find me. Daniel's grip tightened on his weapon. Who's up there? He shouted. Silence. Then, the soft creak of floorboards. Daniel's mind raced. If Daniel Reed was no longer the only threat, who, or what, was upstairs? Radio in for backup now, Daniels ordered. But the radios crackled with static. Dead. Daniels cursed under his breath. They were completely cut off. Amanda's knees buckled, and she slumped against the wall. He said if I ever tried to leave, he'd take Tyler, she whispered, barely able to speak. Daniels crouched beside her. Who said that? Amanda. Amanda's eyes darted to the ceiling, wide with terror. My brother. The words hit Daniels like a hammer. Your brother? She's not Karen. Amanda voice
hissed,
shook, clutching
Karen
her locket
isn't my
still
sister.
dangling from her
She's
neck.
my twin.
Her real name
Daniels
is Catherine,
blinked,
trying to
She's
piece
been
it together.
pretending to be me
But
for
Karen's
years.
The walls of the house seemed to close in. Daniel staggered back, the weight of Amanda's words sinking in. You're saying Catherine, is involved in this. Amanda's voice was barely a whisper. She's the one who started all of this. Daniel Reed was her pawn, but she's the one who wants Tyler. Upstairs, another soft sound echoed. Laughter. High and cold. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. This was no longer just about Daniel Reed. Someone far more dangerous was pulling the strings. Suddenly, the basement lights flickered back on, buzzing and casting sharp, eerie shadows across the walls. And then, they noticed something chilling. Scrawled across the basement wall, in large, jagged letters, were the words, ******. Always find HN, *****. Daniel stared at the message, realizing this wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Officer Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears as the flickering lights cast jagged shadows across the basement walls. The chilling words, *****, always find HIM****, burned in his mind. Amanda was trembling, gripping his arm as though letting go would make the walls close in. Above them, the footsteps grew louder, heavier. Whoever was up there wasn't hiding anymore. Daniels motioned for his team to stay close, his voice low but firm. We're getting out. Be ready for anything. The basement door groaned as Daniel slammed his shoulder into it. The lock snapped with a sharp crack, and the door creaked open into the suffocating darkness of the hallway. But the house was eerily still. Amanda hesitated, pulling back. She's here, she whispered. Daniels scanned the hallway. Stay behind me. They moved cautiously, every floorboard groaning under their weight. The air felt thick, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. A soft, childlike giggle echoed through the hallway. Tyler, or something pretending to be him. Daniel's grip tightened on his gun. They followed the sound, winding through the decaying house until they reached the staircase. On the steps, something glimmered. Tyler's shoe. Amanda gasped, nearly collapsing. Daniels caught her. He's close, Daniel said, steadying her. But Amanda's eyes were fixed on the darkened second floor. No, she's close. A slow, deliberate creak came from above. Then a figure emerged at the top of the stairs. It was Karen, or rather Catherine. But something was wrong. Her face was too calm, her smile too wide. In her hands, she held the locket. Not Amanda's, but another. Tyler's. I told you I'd find him, Catherine purred. Amanda's breath caught in her throat. Where is he? She screamed. Catherine tilted her head. Safe, for now. But you ruined everything. You were supposed to stay gone. Daniel was weak, but I fixed that. I made sure Tyler would never remember you. Daniels raised his gun. Where's the boy? Catherine's smile didn't falter. Oh, officer, you're too late. Suddenly, footsteps thundered behind them. Daniel Reed. His face was pale, drenched in sweat, and his hands trembled. She lied to me. Daniel's voice cracked. She said Amanda was dead, she said. Catherine's expression twisted into a sneer. Oh, now you want to be a hero? She spat. Daniel lunged at her, but Catherine moved faster. From behind her back, she drew a knife, glinting in the low light. Daniels fired. The shot rang out, deafening in the cramped space. Catherine crumpled, the knife clattering down the stairs. But in that moment, a scream tore through the house. Tyler asterisk. Amanda bolted past Daniels, racing up the stairs two at a time, Daniel close behind. They burst into a locked bedroom at the end of the hall. And there he was. Tyler, curled up in a corner, sobbing. Amanda rushed to him, pulling him into her arms. "I've got you, baby. I've got you," she sobbed, holding him tight. Daniel fell to his knees, staring at the boy, his face contorted with regret. But something felt off. Daniels scanned the room. Then he saw it. Another door. A closet. It creaked open slowly on its own. Daniels raised his gun. But it wasn't Catherine. It was another child. A girl. Pale, thin, and terrified. She stared at them, eyes wide. And around her neck, the same silver locket. Daniel's mind reeled. "What? Who is she?" he demanded. Amanda's face drained of color. "That's not possible," she whispered. The girl stepped forward, trembling. "She said I was Amanda." Daniel's grip faltered. "No, that's not possible. Amanda is." The girl looked at Amanda with confusion. "She said you were the imposter." Daniels turned back to the body at the bottom of the stairs. Catherine wasn't moving, but something about her face. It didn't look like Karen anymore. And then it hit him. The real Karen Blake had been dead for years. Catherine hadn't just impersonated Amanda. She'd been someone else entirely. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "She took everything. My name, my son, my life." Daniels felt the ground shift beneath him. But before anyone could speak, the house groaned loudly, the old wood splintering. Smoke began to curl under the doorframe. She set the house to burn, Daniels realized. The fire was spreading fast. "Get out," he shouted. They grabbed the children and raced through the halls, flames licking the walls. The house creaked violently as they burst through the front door, choking on smoke. Behind them, the house collapsed in on itself, flames devouring it whole. Daniel Reed fell to his knees, sobbing. Amanda clung to Tyler, the girl trembling beside them. Daniel stood there, chest heaving, watching the flames. But deep down, he knew the fire didn't erase everything. There were still too many questions. And as the house crumbled, something in the shadows seemed to watch them. Unseen, unfinished. Because some stories don't end, they wait.